Good evening, good morning, salutations from wherever you are. I think it's prudent to go over something that we've talked about before, this Stelan generation. And we can liken that to the star children. And if you look behind that, you're looking at genetic engineering and hybrids. So when I started out in 2005-6, I was communicating with Dr. Boylan, and he had a UFO group, and he was in contact with a group of Stellans. These were authentic, as far as I could tell then and now, because I'm still in contact with some of them. They are authentic star beings, and they're very intelligent. Now, one thing they relayed to him at that time in 2006, so we're talking 10 years ago, they said that 97% of the human race, i.e. most of the humans on the planet, aside from small nomadic groups and maybe aboriginals, aside from a very small amount of people, that most humans had been genetically altered to some degree. So 97% had been altered. And then you get the different ranges. You get hybrids, which are created. They're created in a test tube, which means that their DNA is completely engineered. That's the hybrid, right? And in my early work, I met hybrids, and they are very different. They're very different, and they have a number of peculiarities about them, and there are more than one. Now, I don't believe in this talk about super soldiers, that genetic engineering is only for super soldiers. Like I said, I agree with what they were saying 10 years ago, that 97% of the human race has been genetically upgraded. That means you. Now, the older you are, maybe the less tinkering they can do. And if you're like in your teenage years, they can tinker a lot more because you're still growing. And if you're in embryonic stage, they can start right from they can introduce a new template. So the age at which you're upgraded and how you're upgraded, and your current DNA, your genome, the nature of your genome, because you may have already inherited an upgraded genome, so they just have to tinker with it. You may have inherited an untouched genome, and that may need to be reevaluated. And you may just been born, so you're an embryo, and they can go in there and change everything. And they can, while they're changing the DNA of the embryo, the child, they can change the DNA of the mother, so that the mother's DNA can accommodate the higher frequency of the child. Otherwise, if there's a mismatch, the mother might suffer, right? The mother might have problems with the delivery and with the caring of the child, which can be, right, can be quite high frequency. Or the child, because of the mismatch, there could be a genetic defect, and the child starts with Down syndrome or autism or severe autism or some other one of those, new diseases, incurables, the new incurables. So I'm not a geneticist. Sorry, I'm not a scientist. I'm relaying information that I have. Now it's been 12 years. That information is very consistent. So my own research over the last 12 years, I have studied the differences between, right? So understanding what's been done to the human race, and my observation on the ground floor, I have studied, how people may have been engineered. And is this de novo, does this person have a de novo genetic template? Were they engineered in a lab, on a ship? And this has been done. This has been done. And this has been done. This is not an evil plot. I don't think so. Because this has been done for thousands of years without human knowledge. Or it's been done by the blessings of the angels. Mary, you will bear a child. So the methodology may have changed. The communication may have changed. But if they said to Mary, we're going to genetically engineer your baby and then implant it so you'll be a surrogate mother, she wouldn't understand that. Because 2,000 years ago, people had no understanding of science or genetics. DNA was not invented. So you have to put things into proper perspective. The only reason we're talking about genetic engineering today, and hybrids, and artificial humans, is because we have attained a certain level of genetic proficiency. We have a basic understanding of DNA, enough so that we can receive this information. You can't talk about DNA 2,000 years ago. You can't even talk about DNA 100 years ago, because it was discovered in 1953. So if our engineers said DNA is being altered, they'd be like, hey man, what's DNA? So they say, blessings to your child, she will be bright. Right? They use spiritual terms, they use metaphysics, they use bloodline. Your bloodline is holy. So my point is, it's the same thing. Okay? It's just a different way to communicate, because human beings have evolved or are evolving. And in my view, my personal view, Paris Towson's view, is not an evil plot. Now, if there is a dark Stelan group that is genetically altering people in a certain malicious way for their own benefit, and then using these people to do nefarious things, bad things, then there is a problem. But the procedure, the protocol for upgrading a planetary civilization is not by default evil. Part of the reason it becomes evil is because of the disinformation. The disinformation can prevail because this topic is censored from the mainstream. You cannot talk about extraterrestrials in the mainstream without being called a lunatic. And if you get out there and get any traction, they will assassinate your character, they will destroy your livelihood, they may take out some members of your family. Because they do not want the public to talk about this. The only reason I can talk about this is because my influence is very small. I have a very small footprint. I'm happy with that. I would like a larger footprint because I am sharing valuable knowledge, but I have a small footprint, and because of that, they don't feel I can upset the apple cart. If I became very successful and I would go on national television telling people this stuff, and the cabal didn't like it and they were still in charge, you would see bad things happen to me. I don't want bad things happening to me. I've already had bad things happening to me. So the fact that I'm still talking and I have a small footprint is because I've gone through a gauntlet of torture and abuse, and my life has suffered terribly. Now, it's hard to discuss, and people don't want to deal with those things, but they are true. As soon as I started talking about extraterrestrials, my life just went like this. Because they don't want people like me, to talk about this. And as soon as I started to get traction, something would happen. As soon as I would get things right, they would attack me, and then they would distort my thinking, and then I would get things wrong. And then people would say, well, he's getting things wrong, and Sam is right. It's not a steady path. This is not an easy path because there's a lot of interference, there's a lot of attacks. So genetic engineering, I think personally, it's a very important topic. The fact that it's not in the mainstream, it baffles my mind. It's more important than some of the garbage on the mainstream. But it involves space beings, which don't exist. They're classified, can't talk about it. There are agreements. I can't prove it, so who's going to believe in extraterrestrial or stellans? I call them stellan people. They're different cultures from different parts of the universe, different dimensions. They are more advanced. Now, because they are more advanced, they understand genetic engineering. It's just a basic protocol. You know how every day you go and take a shower and you use soap and you use scented soap? You use scented soap? And you use a scrub brush? How dare you! Use a scrub brush? And you use moisturizer on your skin? Well, they weren't doing that. No, there were no showers 500 years ago. Now everybody takes a shower. In the developed world, everyone takes a shower. It's basic. It's basic protocol of good hygiene. They brush your teeth. Basic protocol, because society is developed. Genetic engineering is a basic protocol of an advanced society. Hey, their genes need to be upgraded, because when you upgrade the genes, people become more intelligent. They can learn more science. They can invent things. They can invent airplanes. They can invent smaller batteries. They can invent smartphones. If the IQ is too low, they can't invent an iPhone. And if we give an iPhone to a caveman, he's going to eat it. It's a basic protocol, is what I'm saying. To progress a civilization, you need to genetically upgrade them. Just like your computer, you upgrade the software. You get a better computer, a faster hard drive, a bigger hard drive, faster processor, updated software, version 10. I don't want version 9. Who wants version 9? I want version 10. I want version 11's coming out. I want version 11. You know why? Because it's better. I need a bigger hard drive. Oh, I need a bigger hard drive. I need a faster I need a new computer. I will buy a new computer because I'm going to get version 11. We accept that. We will upgrade our computer, our smartphone, every year. But when you say to people, there's a genetic engineering.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
No one gonna touch my goddamn DNA. It's software. It's software. It's human software. And that's what the advanced scientists, that's what they do. These guys, they're still killing each other. Let's upgrade their software, their DNA. Whoa. But better not tell them because they get upset. So now somebody's going to get upset.
Oh, I was how dare you say that? I was my child.
You genetically engineered my child without my permission. Hey, you just upgraded your smartphone and you had no problem with that.
Well, it's I use it to communicate and listen to music. It's not alive.
What's more important, your smartphone or your child? Is it more important to upgrade your child or is it more important to upgrade your smartphone? Right now, the smartphone is more important because we don't have the protocol. We have a lot of censorship and repression and suppression of knowledge. And we have a lot of disinformation agents going out there to smother this topic and to say evil hybrids. What does that mean, evil hybrid? Now, so there are hybrid. A hybrid is engineered in a lab. Sometimes they're engineered on Earth in an underground facility. And then the zygote, the genome, is implanted into a fertilized egg, into an egg, right? The egg is fertilized with this engineered DNA. Now, DNA is very small, okay? It's invisible. Tiny, you can't see it. You here, look, there it is. So you can't see it. So the woman is implanted with the hybrid DNA. The hybrid DNA would likely include DNA from the mother, and which would also include DNA from the father, and then some other DNA that would lead to an improvement. Now you're seeing some of this, but you're seeing some of the evidence in the gender identification. That's like evidence of genetic engineering. So gender identification. People don't identify with their gender. Males want to become females. Females want to become males. Males want to become universal. They don't identify with their genitals. That's some more evidence. There's lots of this we've discussed. That's evidence that these people have been genetically altered. Now, it's not a perfect system because we have a lot of disinformation and we don't have clear communication. So that if a child is genetically modified, they're not educated. So they grow up with a lot of questions and then a lot of media manipulation. They're not educated. We haven't been telling our children, son, you were genetically modified. How much? What did they do? Because when you're genetically modified, you go through phases of growth. And one of those phases might be you don't identify with your gender. But and we're seeing younger and younger people do that. But that is a phase. Okay, I'm not a scientist. That's my understanding from all of my research and communication with these Stelans. It's a phase. So just like, before when we grew up, we had this phase that, we think, are we gay? Yeah. Are you homosexual? We had this phase that, do you want to be an astronaut? Or do you want to be an artist? You had this phase that you want to have a child when you're young. Do you want to have a child when you're old? You have your phase when you want to start having sex now. You want to wait till marriage. These are all phases, but these are openly discussed. the phase that I'm talking about. So gender identification is a result of a modified person. But we don't discuss it as a DNA modification. We discuss it as a human thing. It's his right to choose whatever gender he wants. It's like a right. It's a human right. But we're missing the root, which is this child has been modified. And they will go through this phase of gender identification. Once you go through that phase, the DNA settles and you don't have those issues. So my point is, you don't necessarily have to change your gender. It's just a phase. Like a teenager goes through different phases. They go through anger phase and crazy phase. You know, it's a phase. We don't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to take it personal as a human right thing. It's a genetic phase. As the genes are processing data, okay, I'm going to extrapolate and speculate as much as I can, so maybe some people do understand. As the genes, so the genes, right, the genes are expressing themselves. They trigger on, they trigger off, they express, they write new genes, they modify. This is within the human body, right? Epigenetics, they're picking up stuff from the environment. You're rewriting your genes when you're very young. You are picking up a lot of information. You're rewriting your code. So you're in a very susceptible period, a susceptible phase. And with the new genetics, there's also this gender. Hey, wow, the gender is a little more fluid than it used to be. You know, pretty soon we'll be seeing things like God is more fluid. You know, it's going to throw, well, religion, you mean he doesn't exist? No, he's never existed. I have a choice. I don't have to go to church anymore, and I can still have a happy life. These are all part of the genetic upgrades. There's lots of this stuff. There's reams of this stuff due to the genetic engineering, because it's a protocol from advanced cultures which are interacting with our planet, which have been interacting with this planet for thousands of years. So this is not new. It's new. It's only new if you're listening to it now because it's been suppressed in the modern era, or it's been called something else in ancient times. So there are hybrids. There are exceptional individuals. There are Stellans who have, so a Stelan family from another planet colonized here or settled here. They have a child. The child is a Stelan that looks human from a human-looking planet. So you have the Stelan, right, that looks human and doesn't quite fit in. These people are very angry. They, they don't associate well with people. So you have the Stelans, you have the hybrids, you have the genetically engineered people at different ages. At a younger age, maybe there's more modification. The Stelan scientists often, they sometimes use a template, like a genetic template, a genomic template. Maybe if these terms are confusing, maybe I'm misusing them. So they take let's say the DNA of a human being, let's say the DNA of a blonde woman of certain height and a certain features, and they will implant that into different mothers. So we will get a bunch of blonde women with certain features, and they all look similar. But they don't want everybody to be blonde. So they'll modify that template, and they'll create a dark-haired woman, right, with similar features. So you have a woman now with similar features, but with dark hair. They'll create an Asian woman with similar hair, similar features as the blonde woman, but they're Asian. But they share the same, they share that same chassis, the genetic chassis, the template. And they do that because you don't want to create new people all the time, and you want to have people looking pretty close, similar, right? And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't work out, right? So you see some people, they look the same. So you see some people, they look the same but come from different parents, right? We're seeing this. Completely different parents, but they look almost identical or like siblings. It's because likely, I can't prove it, so don't take this as 100% true, but it is likely the fact that each mother was implanted, like, you know, IVF. They were fertilized with the same template that may or may not have modification. And if you put the same template in a Chinese mother, it becomes Chinese looking or Korean looking, and or blonde Caucasian. Okay, so we do see these similarities because that's more evidence of modification. What's the other one I want to talk about? Okay, that's it. So there's the genetic modification, upgrading, engineering, surrogate mothers. You have the hybrids, which hybrids is new. They create the genome and then they implant it. And then you have the Stelans, the people who originate from somewhere else. They have a child. The child is already different. Looks human. Looks human. What is a human? Where do the humans come from? Well, they're colonists. Interstellar colonists. And then you have my research, my own research, starting in 2008, so going on 10 years, has to do with artificial persons. Persons artificial. This is a different class. These are artificial androids, but they're biological. They're not machines. Because DNA, the synthetic DNA, there is synthetic DNA. So the engineers, the scientists create a synthetic human who is then born, implanted in another synthetic human, usually the case, because they have to carry the vibration, they have to carry that frequency. So there has to be some level of synthetic DNA in the mother. The synthetic person, or they could be created in the lab. They might have been created in a lab. Sometimes this happens, actually. The synthetic human is created in a lab and grown to a child, and then the child is released or given up for adoption. So they can give a synthetic child to a family and then change the family's memory so that the family doesn't know that the child is not actually their child. It was... No, they have to do all this because we can't talk about this publicly, right? So people adopt a child, their memories are changed. Sometimes they'll swap a child, you know, this is my child, we'll trade you your child for this synthetic child or this hybrid child. Change your memory, and then you don't know, right? And I'm not saying change your memory, it's a very significant process. You will not know. You will not be able to figure it out. In fact, if I haven't said it, you probably never know. At least now you have an idea. Yeah, you may feel like you adopted a child because maybe you did adopt a child. There's nothing wrong with that child. Sometimes that child will share your DNA as well. So there are biological connections, right? So there are these artificial persons that are living among us. So not everybody's artificial, but there are some artificial persons. And I've identified some in my work, persons artificial, androids among us. So some of the, there's different Stelan groups, and some of the Stelan groups created these androids so that they can influence and take over the world. That's malicious, nefarious. These are dark people, so that they insert their own people, and they can contact and communicate with them, put them in positions of power, and then tell people what to do, and people will believe it because those are leaders. The leaders speaking, the big celebrity speaking, the football quarterback is, I'm such a fan, you know, I worship them. The basketball player, the music mogul, the singer, the actor, you know, the TV anchor. Some of these people have been created in order to steer society. It has some good, if you have a civilization, you have every interest to make sure its society is on track. But there are dark groups that have created their people, and they've tried to unhinge the world. They've tried to take over the world, and they've done a pretty good job. And we're in that process of changing that, right? Of course, that's more advanced, artificial people. In the future, you will understand what I'm talking about. You know, and we're starting to get some of that out, like the TV series Westworld is starting to experiment with that concept, and we'll see how far that goes. And you have Blade Runner, which is another story, which was many years ago. There is evidence of it, but it's highly classified, and it's a very difficult topic because it's still new. I have talked about it, I have introduced it, I have put everything I have into it. And people are, you know, they're not convinced, but it's very early on, you know. Okay, we've all been engineered. I've been engineered. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for modifying me. It's a good thing, unless your ear falls off. Hello?